All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling Victor Hugo's Les Misérables. Yeah, I know. 1,500 pages can seem a bit daunting, but trust me, you don't need to have conquered the whole thing to enjoy this deep dive.
Right. We've got some juicy excerpts from an English translation lined up.
We'll be zeroing in on those, really getting to the core of what makes this story so powerful, the characters, the themes, and, maybe even uncover some hidden gems along the way, even if you're already familiar with the musical or the movies.
Oh, absolutely. One thing that always blows me away about Les Miserables is how Hugo manages to take these massive historical events, like the French Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, all that, and weave them into these deeply personal
It's
stories.
a story that's got it all. Redemption, justice, love, revolution. I mean, the list goes on.
And all set against the backdrop of 19th century France just adds another layer of depth.
Okay, so let's jump right in at the beginning. We meet Bishop Myriel, who's just arrived in the town of D. And right off the bat, Hugo surrounds him with this air of mystery. What's the deal with that?
Well, there are all these rumors swirling around about the bishop.
Like what?
Oh, whispers about his noble lineage, arranged marriages, a life of wealth and privilege. But when he actually shows up,
Yeah.
his lifestyle is anything but lavish. He lives simply, dedicates himself to helping the poor, even turns his palace into a hospital. It's quite a contrast.
He almost seems to be going out of his way to defy expectations?
Right. And then there's that line of his, the beautiful is as useful as the useful. More so, perhaps.
Oh, yeah, that one always stuck with me.
It's like a key to understanding his whole philosophy.
It hints at something deeper, right?
Definitely. Like, he understands human needs on a different level,
Yeah.
believes that compassion and beauty are as essential as, food and shelter.
It's like he's saying that those things feed the soul.
Exactly. And we see this idea play out even more clearly through his interaction with a dying ex-conventionary, G.
Ooh, that's a tense encounter.
It really is. You have G, haunted by his actions during the revolution. He keeps trying to justify the violence and bloodshed, clinging to this idea that 93 was inexorable.
But the bishop doesn't let him off easy, does he?
Not at all. As gentle as he is, he challenges G's worldview, makes him confront the consequences of those revolutionary ideals.
Which ultimately leads G to a moment of self-reflection, even regret.
Exactly. But what's really crucial here is how the bishop responds to that vulnerability. He doesn't condemn, he offers comfort.
And then there's that powerful moment where he gives G his silver candlesticks. I've always wondered, is that just a gesture of kindness, or is there something more going on there?
Oh, I think it's so much more than just kindness. It's a symbolic act that goes to the heart of the novel's themes.
In what way?
Well, the bishop doesn't just forgive G, he gives him the means to change. Those candlesticks represent a chance for a new beginning, a way to break free from the cycle of poverty and despair. It's like he's saying, I believe in you even if you don't believe in yourself yet.
Wow, that's a beautiful way to put it. It's not just about forgiveness, it's about empowerment. And of course, this sets the stage for our main character, Jean Valjean.
Right. Enter Jean Valjean, the ex-convict, hardened by years of imprisonment for stealing.
Wait, remind me.
Stealing a loaf of bread.
A loaf of bread, it's almost unbelievable.
I know, right? 19 years in the galleys. And each escape attempt just earned him more time. It really takes a toll on him.
He's understandably bitter, doesn't trust anyone. You can't blame him carrying all that baggage.
Hugo does a phenomenal job of showing how the penal system dehumanized people, turning them into numbers instead of individuals.
Absolutely. And when Valjean ends up at the bishop's door seeking food and shelter, it's almost like he can't help but revert to his old ways.
Sadly.
And he does steal, right? The bishop's silver in the middle of the night. I mean, how could someone do that after experiencing such kindness?
It would be easy to just label Valjean as a hardened criminal, but I think Hugo wants us to see that his actions are a direct result of the trauma he's endured.
Trauma, yeah.
He's been in survival mode for so long that he simply doesn't know how to exist any other way.
It's all he's ever known.
Exactly. But the really remarkable part is how the bishop reacts when Valjean is caught.
He shows even more mercy. It's incredible. He tells the police that he gave Valjean the silver, and then
He hands over even more silverware.
it's like he's intentionally putting himself at risk.
It's an act of pure selflessness and faith. He's not just protecting Valjean from the law, he's trying to awaken his conscience.
That's powerful.
Imagine the impact this has on Valjean, who's only ever known brutality and punishment. Suddenly, he's faced with this radical, almost unbelievable kindness, It throws his entire world off balance.
He must be thinking, wait, what's happening?
Exactly. He's expecting to go straight back to prison, but instead he's given a chance to become something more than a criminal.
So the question is, does he take it?
Well, that's what the rest of the novel explores, right? That encounter with the bishop becomes a major turning point for Valjean. He takes on a new identity, Monsieur Madeleine, and dedicates himself to living a life worthy of the mercy he's been shown. He becomes a successful factory owner, a respected mayor,
Wow.
all while trying to escape his past.
Trying to outrun that shadow. But it wouldn't be Les Misérables without a little conflict, right?
Oh, you're absolutely right. And that conflict comes in the form of Javert, the relentless police inspector who represents the rigid, unwavering arm of the law.
Oh, Javert. He's convinced that Valjean is a criminal to his core, incapable of change.
Exactly. He's the shadow that follows Valjean, always threatening to expose his secret.
It's almost like an obsession, isn't it?
It runs deep. But it's not just about catching a criminal. There's something more driving Javert, something deeper.
It feels very personal.
Very much so. Javert represents a very specific worldview, one that sees the world in black and white, right and wrong, no room for nuance or second chances.
Rigid.
Absolutely. He believes in absolute justice and sees Valjean as a direct challenge to that belief system.
So we have Valjean trying to build a new life, haunted by his past, and Javert on his trail determined to bring him down. This is where the drama really starts to unfold. But before we get into all that, let's take a quick break and come back to dive deeper into these characters and the choices they make.
So this whole clash between Valjean wanting redemption and Javert clinging to the law, it all comes to a head in one of the most dramatic scenes in the book, the courtroom scene.
Oh, you mean when they've got the wrong guy thinking he's Valjean? Talk about a tough spot.
It is. Valjean has to make an impossible choice. Stay quiet and let an innocent man take the fall or reveal his true identity and risk losing everything he's worked so hard to build.
When I first read that, I was on the edge of my seat. I mean, surely he wouldn't actually confess, would he?
Well, that's the moment that really tests Valjean's character.
He's come so far, made a whole new life for himself, found a purpose in helping others.
Right, but the weight of his past, it's always there, pulling him back.
I mean, it would have been so easy to just stay silent, tell himself he was protecting Cosette, that he was doing more good as Monsieur Madeleine.
He could have rationalized it that way.
But he doesn't.
He chooses the harder path, conscience over self-preservation. In that moment, he shows us what true redemption is about.
It's not about escaping the consequences of your actions. It's about owning up to them.
Exactly. It's powerful, isn't it?
It is. That courtroom scene isn't just about him revealing his identity. It's about him choosing to become the man the bishop believed he could be.
You hit the nail on the head. It's like a declaration, saying, I'm committed to living with integrity, even if it means losing my freedom. And of course, this leads to another nail-biting moment, the escape from prison.
Oh man, that's where his past experiences come in handy, right?
You bet.
He uses that strength he got from the galleys to break free.
Like Hugo saying, even the toughest parts of our lives can hold the key to our salvation.
But it's not just physical strength, is it? He's resourceful, determined to protect Cosette.
You got it. And speaking of Cosette, let's talk about her role in all this. After escaping, Valjean finds her, and she's living with the Thénardier. And let's just say they're not exactly.
Parent of the year material.
No, not quite. They mistreat her, use her, basically treat their own daughters like royalty in comparison.
The Thénardiers, they're fascinating, really. They're like the underbelly of society, those who prey on the weak. No empathy whatsoever.
Like parasites, feeding off the misery of others.
A dark contrast to Valjean, with his growing sense of compassion. He sees in Cosette a chance to make things right, to give her the love he never had.
A chance for redemption.
And their escape from the Thénardiers, another edge-of-your-seat moment.
Walls, shadows, running for their lives.
A reminder that even in the worst times, there's always that glimmer of hope, a chance to break free. But even as they run, you see how risky their situation is, constantly looking over their shoulder.
Living in fear. And this is where Hugo zooms out a bit, shows us the bigger picture of France in the 19th century.
The social, the political, the whole landscape. He doesn't just stick to the big historical events. He shows how those events affect everyday people.
Exactly.
You see it everywhere.
Yeah.
The poverty, the desperation, like with Fantine, and the students fighting for a better future.
It's a good reminder, even with wars and revolutions raging,
Yeah.
the human story is always playing out on a smaller scale, a personal level.
Absolutely. And speaking of epic battles, we can't forget Waterloo.
Ah, Waterloo, a turning point in history.
And Hugo uses it to explore so much. Fate, heroism, the brutal reality of war, those descriptions of the battlefield, the armies, the sheer chaos.
Vivid, powerful.
And it's interesting how he doesn't glorify war, but instead focuses on the human cost, how pointless it all is.
Right. Like that moment with the peasant looting the dead on the battlefield. Makes you think, doesn't it?
About what happens to our morals in a crisis, yeah.
That question runs through the whole novel. The characters are always facing these tough choices, trying to find their way in a world that keeps changing on them.
And Valjean is right in the middle of that moral maze, with Javert always close behind.
Their fates are tied together in a way, aren't they?
One seeking redemption, the other clinging to his rigid beliefs. It makes you wonder if either of them can find peace in a world that seems so chaotic.
That's the question that keeps us hooked. But you know what? Let's pause here for a moment. We'll come back and untangle the final threads of this epic story and see what Hugo might be saying about justice, mercy, and what it means to be human.
So, we're back and ready to wrap up our Les Mis journey. We've seen Jean Valjean go from the depths of despair to, well, maybe not a saint, but pretty darn close.
He's come a long way, that's for sure.
So what's the takeaway? What's Hugo trying to tell us with this guy's story about ourselves, about the world?
You know, that's the thing about Les Mis. It throws out more questions than answers. Makes us grapple with those big, complicated themes. Justice, mercy, what it means to be human.
No easy answers, that's for sure. But maybe that's the point, right? To force us to face those uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about how we treat each other, about the choices we make every single day.
Exactly. And with Valjean, what's interesting is that it's not like a straight line from darkness to light.
Yeah.
He's constantly tested, tempted, pulled back towards those old habits.
Yeah, even after meeting the bishop and all that kindness, he still makes those
Huh?
questionable choices.
Well, he's human, right? Like that time he steals the coin from little Gervais. Small act, but it shows he's still capable of doing wrong, even after being given a chance to change.
Like, come on, Valjean, really?
Right. But that scene is crucial. It shows us that change isn't a one-time thing, it's a process. Even after having that huge shift in how he sees the world, Valjean still has to deal with his past, the habits that are ingrained in him.
It's a good reminder that none of us are perfect, that we all mess up. Even the best of us can do things we regret.
It's how we deal with those mistakes that defines us.
Totally. And Valjean chooses compassion time and time again, even when it puts him in a tough spot. Like when he reveals who he really is to save Fantine. He could have just kept quiet, let them take the wrong man,
Easy way out.
but he couldn't live with that.
It's like that act of mercy from the bishop planted a seed in him. And that seed keeps growing, even when things are dark. But his journey isn't just about him, right? It's a statement about the world he lives in.
Oh, for sure. Hugo was a huge critic of all those injustices. The poverty, people taking advantage of others, systems that trapped folks in misery.
He wasn't afraid to call it out.
And you see it with Fantine. She's a victim of circumstance, just trying to survive. And the system, instead of helping, just kicks her down over and over.
Tragic.
Then there are the Thénardier. They're like the worst of the worst, taking advantage of others, no conscience whatsoever.
The dark side of that system, profiting off suffering.
They're like that dark mirror showing the cruelty that exists in society.
It's tough to see.
But even with all that darkness, there are glimmers of hope. The bishop believing in redemption, the students fighting for change, and Valjean showing us that even a criminal can choose a different path.
Yes, and firing.
But what about Javert? How does he fit into all this? Always chasing Valjean. Is he just a bad guy, a symbol of a heartless law? Or is there more to him?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because at first glance, he seems so rigid, so inflexible.
Totally. Like, he's convinced that Valjean is bad to the bone, can't ever change.
But I almost see Javert as more tragic than villainous.
In what way?
His whole world, his belief system, it's crumbling around him. He believes in this absolute justice, this clear line between good and evil. But Valjean, with his transformation, throws a wrench in all that.
Like, what happens when things don't fit into neat little boxes anymore, when those lines get blurry?
Right. Javert can't reconcile what he sees with what he believes. And in the end, it destroys him.
Sad, really.
It's a lesson, maybe. Holding on too tightly to our beliefs can blind us to the truth. And that truth, as Hugo suggests, is that people are complicated.
Capable of both good and bad.
We're all a mix of light and shadow, and the choices we make determine which side wins out.
So where does that leave us, the readers, in all of this?
That's the magic of Les Mis. It doesn't give you easy answers, it makes you find your own. It's a mirror asking us, What do we believe about justice, about mercy? How do we react to suffering? What choices do we make when things are unfair?
Big questions. So, as we wrap up our deep dive, we'll leave you with that. What does Jean Valjean's story mean to you? What can we learn from his struggles, his triumphs, his relentless pursuit of redemption?
Les May is a story that sticks with you. It makes you think harder, feel deeper, be more compassionate, more understanding, more forgiving.
And in a world that often feels divided and cynical, that's a message we need now more than ever.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, folks, that's a wrap on another deep dive. Thanks for joining us. And hey, who knows? Maybe next time we'll tackle the musical adaptation of Les Mis, compare it to the original, see what they did with it. But until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.